Welcome to Tremendous Talk. We got the industry, tea, and the jokes. Actors, directors, musicians, and more. You're listening to Tremendous Talk.
Welcome to Tremendous Talk, everybody. My name is Law.
And I'm Ash.
And we're so excited to be back with you. Another episode, just hitting the end of January. What a weird start to the year. I hope everyone's holding up pretty well because it has been turbulent, to say the least. But I'm always happy to have this space to, I don't know, talk about things that are happy and inspiring. How you doing,
I'm just
Ash?
glad. I'm glad that these 87 days of January are over now.
Yep, that is exactly right. There have been 87 days of January. No, it is I don't know. We have such great guests on this podcast that it does like change kind of like the trajectory of how I'm feeling whenever I listen to an episode. So honestly, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for the guests for being here because that's like the little spice of life that keeps us going, I think, in my opinion.
Spicy life. And thank you for
Spicy.
our listeners too.
Mhm.
I'm really glad we have a platform and people actually watch and listen to our things. So thank you so
Yes.
much for being here. We're very grateful that we are able to share voices and highlight people and just share representation of the community. It's so important and I'm so grateful for what we get to do, especially on this 87th day of January.
Yes, of course, of course, of course. But I don't want to digress too much. I'm excited to be here, especially because this week on the podcast, we welcome Karen Chan.
Woo!
Woo, woo.
Karen Chan is a mom, author, lawyer, and founder of Gloo Books.
Yeah, Gloo Books is an independent publishing company that creates beautiful, high quality children's books for more inclusive and just like a compassionate future.
And if Glue Book sounds a little bit familiar, our
Hmm.
tremendous talk friend Harry Shum Jr. published a book with his wife called Marty Dares to Dance. It's available now on Glue Books.
We are so grateful to chat with Karen about her mission in founding Gloo Books, the importance of representation in books, and highlighting diverse stories.
Let's go! Welcome to the Tremendous Talk Podcast, Karen Chan.
That's me flipping through a book. Oh,
Oh,
wow. It's beginning. The podcast has officially started.
welcome to the podcast, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, you know what's cool is that this is like maybe the first time one of our guests was recommended through another guest. I think Harry Shum Jr.
Oh,
was the one who put us on
oh,
Glue Books and you, Karen. So thank you for joining us.
of course. We love Harry and Shelby.
Yeah. You know, like we got to learn a little bit about like his experience working with Glue and getting Marty Dares to Dance published. But I'd love to just hear from you, like what the mission statement, the objective of Glue Books is, just to get us started and give our audiences kind of a feel of what your goals are.
Yeah, so Glue Books is a children's book publishing company. We started in 2021, and really it was I started it as a very personal reason. You know, I'm a mom of two young boys, and when I started reading books to them, and my oldest loves reading books, I really just had a hard time finding a lot of books with characters that looked like him in it. I mean, to this day, honestly, it is kind of hard to find Asian American boy like main characters in children's books. And so it sort of led me down this whole journey of looking into the publishing industry and books themselves, but then the industry that's associated with it, right? So the publishing companies that are creating these books, greenlighting these titles, finding authors, and I just found that the industry just seemed very old-fashioned, very white, to be honest. It kind of was no surprise to me that children's books really struggled with sort of this diversity issue and inclusion issue. So I think in the last few years, the industry sort of made strides to highlight voices and authors from underrepresented backgrounds, but we still have a long way to go, I feel like. And I just think it's so important that children be able to see themselves in the books that they read. We talk about representation being so important, obviously, in like media and television and movies, but books are really like the first exposure to that media that children have starting from when they're babies. And it's so important for their own self-confidence and sense of worth in the world, as well as being able to see how other people live and other people's experience that might not look like them. For developing empathy and compassion and seeing like, hey, there can be people from this world in that are in my neighborhood or that I might be um, meeting in the world that might not have the same lived experiences that I have, but we still share a commonality or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really been the driving force behind it. So our company publishes diverse children's books.
Amazing. I think it's such important work because I couldn't tell you any books I grew up with where I was like, that's me, like on the page. So that's super important that there's so many options now. Like you take one look at the Gloo Books website and there's a ton of options and a ton of cultures that are being touched upon. So that's important work. And I'm glad someone out there is like spearheading a movement like that. So we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, so now that we've gotten to know Glue Books a little bit, I'd love to go into a little speed round with you. Feel free to take this at your pace, whatever you want.
Okay.
Question number one, what is your boba order?
Oh my gosh. The classic boba, but reduced sugar.
I love it. I love the specificity.
Yeah.
What's your comfort food? This is very related to your book.
Yes. Oh my gosh. My comfort food is I would say my mom's oxtail. So it's like a braised oxtail that has just been like simmering. It's in like, a lot of spices and soy sauce and so it's just like falling apart. And if you've had oxtail, it's like has that like sticky collagen in it, and it's just so delicious over rice. And I would say that's my comfort food.
Mm. And this might be a hard question for you, but what are you reading currently?
Oh my gosh. Well, kids' books, I feel like I'm always reading. So in the genre of kids' books, me and my kids' favorite one that we've been revisiting a lot, aside from Glue Books, his own books, is Every Night is Pizza Night. That's a really cute one. And then on my grown-up list, I just finished The Vegetarian, which was amazing. It was a really fast read, and I loved it. It was, yeah. So I'm kind of on to my next one. I just got oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name. Um Eckhart Tolle's book, and I don't remember the name, but I think it's like one of his, you know, most recent like bestseller books. So
Oh, that sounds so. The vegetarian's actually very high on my list, so that's very exciting to hear that you just got done with it. Okay, and then wrapping up this speed round, you've
yeah.
been in a lot of books. You've been in a lot of world books kind of situations. If you could put yourself into the world of any book, whether it be a children's book or an adult book, what world would it be?
Oh my gosh. Well, on the topic of food, I would put myself in the world of, have you guys heard of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
Of course we
Oh,
have.
yeah, it's like when we were little, like, but I would put myself in that world because I always thought it was so cool that you could like rain food.
I love it. It gets
That's the
dangerous
one
really fast, though. You got a lake in your boat.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love this. This makes me happy. And then, Law, do you want to wrap up for us?
Yeah, so we always ask this of our guests at the end of the speed round. It's kind of a loaded question, but interpret it however you'd like. But we are the Tremendous Talk podcast, so we have to ask you, Karen, what do you think makes you tremendous?
I think my empathy makes me tremendous, and I actually think it's what makes everyone tremendous. I think it's a real superpower to be able to tap into connecting with other people and understanding where people are coming from. And I feel like we need a lot more of that in this world. So I would say that's my superpower, or what makes me tremendous.
Yeah.
And my superpower.
Oh,
That's
that
so
makes
great.
me
No,
happy.
empathy is so important, and I think we need it now more than ever. I've been saying it for the last however many recent years, just because it feels like it's lacking in certain ways. But yes, thank you for sharing that. I'm curious now, just because I was thinking about my upbringing and the books that like I wish I could see myself in. Did you actually have an experience like that where you read a book and you saw Karen in this character. You know what I mean? Like as a kid.
Yeah, I hate saying this as a kid. I mean, obviously this was like in the 80s, so this is a long time ago, but no, I can't remember a single book where I saw myself. The only book I can recall that I was like, oh, there's an Asian character as a kid, was either like Babysitter's Club. Was her name Claudia? Do you remember? You guys remember the Babysitter's Club? There was like one of them who was Asian. Um, but then as a kid, it was Claudia. Okay. As a kid, like picture books, much younger. I just remember this picture book called Tiki Tiki Tempo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be about two, I'm presume Chinese or Asian boys. I don't know if they like exactly say it, but um it's they kind the book is problematic for many reasons because like Tiki Tiki Tembo is not actually like a Chinese word or Japanese or wherever it was supposed to be held like set.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking like, oh, that's a fun book, but like totally not identifying with it because it just was an amalgamation of like random like Asian-y cultures, I guess.
Hmm.
Uh, Not a great book. I bet that's like the only one I probably remember as a small kid in terms of books.
Mm.
A friend of Tremendous, Sabrina Wu, they have a very funny stand-up bit about Tiki Tiki Tembo.
Yes. Oh my
Yes,
God.
Yeah.
yes,
I've
yes.
seen that. It's so
It's
good.
so funny, and I think it accurately
Totally.
describes kind of the problematic nature that you just mentioned.
Oh my God. I love that bit. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. Wow, that just like sparked something in me.
I know.
For me, there was one book that was like a Filipino encyclopedia book with pictures in it, like, but it was
Oh.
literally like a reference book. So me and my grandma would sit down on our like bunk beds that we shared and go through this encyclopedia together because that was the only book I had where I was like, oh, look, it looks like me.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
But I am curious. This is like a moment of generational healing, right? Like you're providing for your son things that you didn't have growing up. And this is like Karen, what you do is kind of a big deal. And I don't know, like, has that like hit you yet that this is all like a big deal? But I want to know what was the moment like when your son finally saw himself in a book?
He knows that I wrote this book, the first book, What's That, and so I think he always gets really excited about it. I actually just did like an online reading for like 90 kids in Game County. And it was late, it was like a nighttime story reading, and there were so many kids online. And he joined and he's just so proud. He's like, Mom, when can we read like my book,
Oh.
And I hear this response a lot from our customers and like readers, or they're like, it's so amazing for my child to be able to point to the book and say like, oh, I ate that, or like my grandma made that for me, or oh wow, that looks like me, and it's it truly is what makes this work like just worth doing. I think so often creators or business owners can get really like bogged down in sort of the day-to-day just like stress of trying to
Mm,
run a small business or living life, like just getting on with work and whatever obligations sort of you have. And so it is really wonderful to be able to step back from that every once in a while and just talk to people whose like lives our books have impacted. And so like the other day I sent out a newsletter and people responded just with like all these stories of how they utilize their books, of how
mm,
they feel so seen by the books that we've created and published, and that they like recommend it to their friends, and it's something they wish they had as kids. So I just feel like this does resonate, and so it's just about kind of going back to that like spark of like why it's so important, and you don't really know that until you really talk to people and really like engage with others. So I think even more so why we need to have more empathy with each other, communicate with each other, be in community with each other, because that's really what like keeps us going and doing this like amazing work that everyone is doing to just create a better community and future.
That's beautiful. I think just to pitch, you should do a version of What's That with Scratch and Sniff.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be fun to see like the cuisine of these cultures, but then get like
yes.
a hint of like what the essence of it would be?
I know.
I
That
would
would
eat that up.
that's
Like
No
brilliant.
law. I would be so pissed off reading to my kid this book, and I'm just like salivating while I'm reading
you
it.
just smell the oxtail coming through the page.
I know. Oh, that's such a good idea.
Did you fall? I mean, I have to imagine, did you have like a pathway to becoming an author prior to doing children's books? Like, and it was like a pivot kind of situation, or did you always focus on making stories for a younger audience that would resonate like more, I guess, with a wider net, I suppose?
N no. So I had were are you kind of asking like my experience before?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, I don't come from publishing. I don't come from writing. I mean, I think I've always been a very creative person, but my background's actually in law, which I cannot think of a more non-creative field than being a lawyer. But yeah, I was a corporate attorney for I was at my old firm for about 6 years, and I've always been a very artistic, like creative person. My adult life has sort of just led me down this path that was a little different, which, I loved in different ways because I think I had always wanted to start my own business. And I think entrepreneurship, there is a certain amount of creativity that's involved in that, right? So having kind of like a legal background and a corporate practice that I did, it really like set me up to be able to bring in a lot of skills that I needed for starting a business. But in terms of like the writing itself, no like formal experience, no like MFA in writing or anything. It's just something that creative expression is something that I've always really leaned into. It's always just been a hobby of mine. So this is the first time that I've actually been able to make it sort of what I do as a profession, as a publisher. And so I feel really lucky to be able to do that because I think a lot of people might not have that opportunity. So
Right.
this is something that just brings me a lot of joy.
I
Oh.
love a good career pivot.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you talk about some of the trials and tribulations you faced in starting Glue Books?
Yeah, of course. There's so much. I mean, I started Glue Books very like from the ground up, like bootstrapped. I put some of like my own money into just getting it started, just to get like an initial book created and inventory. And so I've learned so many lessons along the way of just, what it means to not only in the publishing process, that was like a whole thing I had to learn because the industry is it's not very transparent. It's kind of hard to like know how publishing works. Like a lot of people don't know about like what it means to like get an agent or get a book published. So I had to just kind of like figure that out along the way. That was difficult. And that was knocking on doors too, just being
Mm.
like, hey, especially, when it gets to like our books getting distributed and out to different bookshops and retailers and stuff. So like on the business side, that had been really difficult sort of at the beginning because I was a total outsider to publishing. Like, everyone's like, who are you? You know? And so gosh, there's so many. I think anyone who starts their own business knows that like you make so many mistakes along the way, and it's just about like getting back up, and like constantly just moving forward because and really trying to take all of those mistakes that you made, or things that had happened to you or setbacks that had happened, in stride and really like learning from them. So it's sort of constantly having like the curiosity and the like motivation to keep moving forward, even though you experience a whole lot of like, I mean, we've done a print run with like a mistake in it, and like had to go back and redo that. I mean, it's been, you can imagine like the gamut of trials and tribulations that a business owner kind of goes through, but I don't even have the time to go through.
It's funny that you mentioned like you didn't have an MFA and right, but this is your MFA. It's literally starting this
Yeah,
publishing company.
exactly. I know. And to be honest, I don't think and even if someone's out there like wanting to publish a book or like send in a manuscript, like I genuinely believe like you do not have to have that formal training. Again, like even that kind of stuff is gate kept, and there's certain, people who have historically had the like privilege to be able to kind of pursue these degrees, or maybe like move to New York and work for like a publishing house, even though New York's cost of living is like so expensive, and an entry level publishing job is like, entry level pay. So it excludes certain demographics that like might not have that come from that socioeconomic background to be able to support that. And so I truly believe like, anyone who has an idea out there, you don't need to have these like credentials to be able to do great work. And in fact, like we even take unagented submissions, so like
Whoa.
so yeah, we don't, I think that having an agent is great, but I also think that's just another set of like gatekeepers that get to decide who's worthy of being an author that gets to be submitted to different publishing houses, and who isn't. And that's all very, very subjective based on the particular agent's sort of experience and whatnot. So, we have an open submission email, and things come in, and we take a look at all of them. So,
Karen out here doing the work.
well, it's like just trying to level out the playing field, for people,
Yeah.
really. But that's sort of been our approach.
Yeah, I can't help but like hearken. Have you seen the movie Elf? With Will
Yes.
Ferrell. There's like the scene where it's like these like corporate
Yeah.
people trying to like build out like a kid's book, and like there's print issues, right? Where it's like it's only
Yeah.
half the story. It's like kids won't matter or won't mind. And it's just like it's nice to know that there are people out there that are being like, oh, let me uplift like people don't have the opportunities, or like make sure that these stories will resonate in a way. But I guess to the flip side of Ash's initial question, what have been some of your greatest successes in the time that you've started Gloo Books?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the greatest success has been really seeing kids read our books.
Mm,
Honestly, that's like truly of, I mean, we could talk about like, revenue and all these like contracts that we signed, and Harry himself, like being able to publish Harry's book was just like such a like huge deal for us, that he actually entrusted us with his like book baby. But I would say like the biggest highlight for me is really like seeing teachers utilize our books in their classrooms, seeing kids like reading our books at bedtime, getting like emails and people posting on social media and tagging us, being like, we're reading this book. This is my kid's favorite book. I mean, that has to be like the best thing, for me. And then on the business side, we just signed a distribution deal at the beginning of the year. So that has been really exciting. Yeah. It has been, something that we've kind of been exploring, but we're a little hesitant for a variety of reasons to like enter into. But we found a really great partner, Baker and Taylor Publisher Services. So we're excited to see, how this year unfolds. This just means that our books can get a distributor just means that our books can get to many, many more markets. So many, many more bookstores, libraries, schools, and stuff like that. So that was sort of a big milestone that we were able to check off, the list lately.
That is so
right.
That's like a big deal too. How exciting. I can't imagine all the people that are going to be able to just like hold your books with their individual hands and stuff. That's just
Yeah.
in this journey, you're a mom, you're an author, you come from law, like there's been a lot of like different things that you've gone through and ways that like you've changed during this process. But from creating What's That to starting Glue Books and making space for all these diverse voices and really like being a champion of representation within the publishing community. How have you changed during all this? Like have you seen like ways that like you are different from the beginning or something, or things that like have surprised you along the way?
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's such a good question. I feel like the change that has happened has been a lot more um like personal development kind of stuff. Like I said, I think if anyone who's like started, like I'm sure you guys understand, starting your own project, your own business, putting yourself out there requires like such a great amount of resilience and persistence. And that has been like the biggest teaching lesson to really like believe in myself, like especially your gut instincts, and so
Yeah.
sometimes you go against that because you hear what everyone else is saying and you sort of are like, oh, like as as a business owner, I should be doing XYZ, or like I need to be pursuing like this, or networking with these people, or being on this social platform or whatever. And like you kind of start to go in all these different directions that there's a lot of there's just a lot of voices out there of telling you what you should and shouldn't do.
Mhm.
Um, and often to like not really listening to your own gut feeling about what you should be doing. So I think if anything, it's really taught me to trust my own voice a little bit more. And I think that's sort of been like how I've grown.
I hope we're all continuing to like have personal growth, but it's always nice because
Um,
from an outwards perspective, like you have this business and you're doing uplifting so many people, like Ash was saying. But like the personal growth is something that I don't think gets talked about a lot, especially.
right.
So I'm glad that we're able to share that kind of stuff on this platform. But speaking of our platform, we do have a lot of AAPI audience who are like there's probably a handful of them who are interested in wanting to create stories for children or books for children. So for anyone who is listening in, what would be kind of your advice for them to either get their foot in the door or get started on that process so that their book could maybe eventually end up on Glue Books or in bookstores around the world?
Right. I would say my biggest recommendation is to take a look at the different publishers out there. So, there are like sort of obviously the big five publishing companies, they're massive. I
Mhm.
mean, to get your manuscript, you have to like seen, you have to, really have like either an agent, or and that is also a way that you can do, is that you can like reach out to an agent to be represented and then submit your submission. But I really think there are so many small indie publishers that are really mission driven like us, and they are um if you are someone who is from the AAPI community, you should find a publisher who either has someone who is AAPI on their editorial staff, or is owned by someone, the company is owned by and run by someone from your background. Because I think from start to finish, from the process of like editing, to creating the book, to the art direction, whatever it might be, to getting it out to audiences who this book will resonate with, those are the people who will best understand it and advocate for your book, to be able to say, hey, this book needs to be in the hands of XYZ, and it needs to be out there, and they'll be the best at like pitching and selling your book. So, they're not many, but they are out there. So I do think like you should take a look, and reach out to them, because for us at least, that's anyone who has a manuscript, or they want to publish a kid's book. I also always tell them, like, tell me what it is about you. You can give me like a manuscript that's like amazing. I read it on the first pass and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I want to know, like, who's the author behind it? Like, what's your story? What motivated you to write this book? Who are you? Like, what makes you tick? Why did you come up with this story, and why do you think it should be out there? Like, I want to know the person behind it. And frankly, when we go and sell the book to, librarians and bookstores, they want to know too. People love authors. Like, they want to know what inspired you to create this. Like, who's the person behind
Yeah.
this work of art, and so if you do submit, tell us about you, like, tell us a little bit about who you are. And people sometimes just submit manuscripts and I'm like, but I want to know who you are.
Yeah.
Who's the author?
Well, I guess we'll start writing our kids' books, Ash.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I have, I have, yes.
You
Really?
you have you out
Yeah, I
you
do.
have?
It's just
Oh.
one of those like crazy ideas that my best friend Brienne said something. I don't want to share it yet, but she said this phrase and I was like, "Whoa." And so it's one of those things where it just like pops out of your head, right? Like you don't have a chance or a choice to even choose whether sometimes ideas are birthed out of you or not. And so
Mhm.
sometimes you just got to write stuff down, and I love like that chase of the journey of constantly like trusting, like exactly what you're talking about, trusting yourself, knowing that like whatever's going on in your head sometimes deserves to be on a piece of
Yeah.
paper or potentially read by people and stuff. So I think that's like such a valuable piece of advice is just to trust yourself and like to believe in yourself in the process of things too. So
Yeah.
there's been so many bits of wisdom in this. Thank you so
Yeah, I
much.
know.
Oh,
Thank
I
you
can't
so
believe.
much.
So wait, you have a draft of a kid's book, or you wrote it?
I have the words and I have a potential uh
Artist.
animate artist, not animator, that I want to work
Yeah.
with. But it's just one of those things in the process of things. Like I am very much on my motherhood journey at the moment, and so I think like part of birthing out this book, right, is like I have an idea now and I'd like to extend our family and like revisit this idea of the book after I am like an actual mother because it's so pivotal to the book itself.
Mhm.
But that's so funny, right? About like how the book like follows you and changes with you and like flows, like
Yeah.
the pages like aren't just pages on on a not a script but within the book, right? And it's like so much of yourself is within these pages that you kind of have to let it change you in a way. I don't know.
Mm,
Yeah.
Books.
I
Yeah.
get that.
Totally get it.
You got to live a little life for it to like for the words to have even more
Exactly,
meaning and insight,
exactly.
right?
Like Harry's
Um,
book, for example,
mhm.
his kid helped him make this book. Like it's
Yeah.
what pivoted like this idea to happen and like really
Right.
I encourage people to get over this fear of like getting over and like taking a second chance and getting back up on your feet. So I love books are so important, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will say that this has been a really interesting episode for me because it's so outside of kind of my scope of like of what I do, right? Like we talk a lot about like film and TV on this podcast or acting and directing, but to get like an insight to a very, very different kind of industry and hearing your struggles and like the things that you have to get through to even get to where you are right now, it's always humbling and inspiring at the same time to know that that like resilience is key in any pathway that you choose. So maybe
Yeah.
that's the next kids book, resilient, something about
Resilience. I
resilience.
know.
But Karen, before we let you go, we with all of our guests, we always like to pass the mic at the end of the episode just to get whether it's not like a promotion that you want to give or what you got going on in your life, or you just want to give some advice, more advice than you've already given to our audiences. We'd love to give you a small place on this platform to kind of express yourself. So please take it away. And again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I mean, gosh, I feel like we've covered so much in I can't even believe 30 minutes how we did
Right.
that. But I would say I think, and this is sort of where my head is at, I think just because of everything that's been going on in January, like everything from the LA fires to this just the chaos that is going on around us and the uncertainty that we're all facing, and especially on the subject of diversity and inclusion and the stripping away of all of that, and in fact, the like scapegoating of people of color and immigrants, and that we're seeing now that's just so brazen. I just so I'm saying all this because this is sort of my mindset right now, but in sort of my day-to-day life on January 31st. But I would say my last, uh I guess words would be yeah, more than anything to like lean into each other, have empathy for each other, like connect with each other. Like I'm so glad we are connecting, like this is community, right? So more than anything, we need each other. We need to be able to be connected with like our friends and families and neighbors. It's really important to be able to build that resilience into whatever future it is that we have, for all the good and all the bad and what's sort of awaiting us on the other side. I think we can survive it and thrive in it if we have each other. So
I hope so, and I second that. I think we need a lot more kindness right now and just understanding. And I was telling Ash at the beginning of this episode how kind of angry I am, just like as like my neutral form right now
yeah.
is a lot of anger. So to hear that in such an eloquent way is like very calming to my heart. So thank you again for sharing time. Like I love these 30-minute episodes. This could have been like 2 hours. I feel like there's a
Please.
lot more we could talk about with you, but go.
You guys are
Definitely
so
stay
good at like just getting all the like juice, like just digging in right away. 30 minutes. I'm so impressed.
We'll take it. Amazing. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. We're so grateful, and we love what you're doing. And can't wait to see where else Glue Books goes and Karen goes, and we'll definitely stay in
Yes.
touch.
And we have more books coming out. Sorry, shameless plug of Glue
Do
Books. We have more titles coming out at the end of this year. We're going to start making those announcements, but they're really amazing books. So yeah, stay tuned.
Oh, I can't wait. I want all of them on our future children's shelves. The Tremendous Talk podcast is produced by Lawrence Sharma, Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, Gabriela David, Joseph Corralde, and Jeremiah Abraham in collaboration with Tremendous. The Tremendous Talk podcast jingle is by Jared Sanchez and Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, produced at Amsterdam Records.